Hello everyone, nonStorm here, and in this video I'm going to show you my Magicka Warden PvP build for the Dragonhold patch. In the last patch, the build that I've made for my Magicka Warden was very offensive and burst centric, and it was able to completely destroy players from full health. However, it lacked means of control. What that meant is when I'm fighting good players who know what my build is capable of and know how to counter my burst, there was very little I could do to force them to take my damage. And so in this patch, thanks to a lot of changes that ZOS did to the Warden class itself, to skills surrounding it, and to additional sets that I decided I'd like to use, I came up with a build that has a lot more means of control and is able to really dominate the entire area surrounding it while still keeping very strong offensive potential and very strong burst. So let's get right into it, starting with the stats. So there are a couple very important skills that we want to make sure to use to buff ourselves up so we can look at the stats. Those skills are our Mitigation, our heal, any sort of heal will do just to keep up our major toughness, and our Frost Cloak to keep our resistances up. When we are buffed with all of these, we can take a look at our stats. We can see our max Magicka right now is at 44k actually. On both bars we have that, and our max health, while currently looks at 30k, that's because of an Emperorship buff that we have. Usually it is around the 28k, however. And our stamina pool is at almost 18k, as you guys can see. Now, the combination of these three stats is very strong and effective and very important for Wardens, because Wardens have skills that depend on their max health, as well as skills that depend on their max Magicka. And Mag Wardens really need that extra max stam because they don't have a lot of means of regenerating their stamina back through the fight, and so to keep mobile you need that pool to be very high as well. So those three pools give us a very strong base for our build. But if we actually buff ourselves up completely and then also use our Permafrost or our Northern Storm, you can see that our max Magicka is actually at almost 50k on both bars, and that is due to a change that ZOS did with the Northern Storm morph of the skill. And just imagine the amount of power from 50k max Magicka ramping up your damage on all your offensive abilities. Very strong, very effective for bursts, and it lasts for 30 seconds after the cast, even when the ultimate is over. So very strong potential, and let's rebuff and look at the other stats. So our spell damage, as you can see, is quite low. It's only around the 2k. It goes up to roughly 2.5k when we use our weapon enchantment on a back bar, and our spell critical is at 44%. Our spell penetration is at 8.3k, and overall that just means we have very strong offensive stats. However, our spell damage is a little bit low, and the reason it is quite low is because we really don't depend on it for the damage. We have a lot of penetration, very high spell critical, and a shit ton of max Magicka, and that's where our damage comes from. Our Magicka recovery, as you can see, sits currently at around the 1400. We have the Betty Natch in addition to that to give us a little bit more Magicka recovery, and on top of that we are playing as a Breton, so really our Magicka sustain is fantastic on this build. Our stamina recovery is also at 800, which is really decent. And then if we buff ourselves up with the Frost Cloak yet again, and we look at our resistances, you can see we have 26k spell, 23k physical, and 3k crit resist. On top of that, we have Bloodspawn to buff up our resistances even more by 6.5k, both the spell and physical resist, and we have 5% mitigation from all damage that was created by players through another set that we're using, which we're going to get to in a moment. So overall, very tanky, very offensive, and has very good stats and very good Magicka control. Now let's go over the sets that we are using and discuss those a little bit. So the first set we're going to discuss is Bloodspawn. As you guys probably know by now, I love Bloodspawn. I use it on pretty much every one of my characters this patch. It is a fantastic monster helm. Lots of the monster helms we liked to use in the past got nerfed, and Bloodspawn is really one of the best options out there right now. It buffs up your stamina recovery, which helps you a lot. It gives you ultimate regen, so you can keep pumping out those Northern Storms and keep your max Magicka at roughly 50k all the time, and it buffs up your resist. So really, it gives you everything that you need to survive well and to buff up your stats. Really good set and really good on this build. Next up, we are using Necropotence as per usual. Necropotence is just a fantastic set to maximize the amount of max magicka you can have on your build. It is especially good with Warden, since Warden have a very easy access to a pet, the Betty Netch, which is a free cast that you can keep up on you at all times. It lasts for 25 seconds, and so you can just cast it once every 25 seconds and always have the pet active. And so the 5th piece on this set will always be active on both your bars, and gives you a lot of max magicka. Really good for the class, in my opinion. One of the best sets you can use. Next, we are using the Blessing of the Potatoes set. So this set, the great thing about it is it reduces the damage you take from players by 5%. That means all sources of damage. That's dots, that's direct damage, ranged abilities, anything that they use against you, it reduces the damage from it. Absolutely fantastic. And on this character specifically, we use 3 pieces of the set rather than 2 like I do on some other classes. The reason for that is the 15% cost reduction on our ultimate abilities is huge when we have such a very important ultimate to use in our build, which is our Northern Storm, of course. And that ultimate is so powerful that reducing the cost of it by 15%, especially since it's such an expensive ult, is really effective. The combination of potatoes and Bloodspawn together allows us to have our Northern Storms up within less than 30 seconds, which allows us to keep our 50k max magicka at all times, which is very important. On the back bar, we are running 2 pieces of willpower. This is just to buff up our max magicka on back bar just a little bit. And on the front bar, we are running, as per usual, the Master's Lightning Staff. It is a fantastic set to use if you're using the Destructive Touch skill, and it helps you keep your offensive pressure up very high, which we'll discuss a little bit more when we go to our skills. I'm using on this build 1 heavy, 1 medium, and 5 light pieces, and I'm going to go over all of my pieces very quickly so you guys can see exactly the enchantments and traits I use on every single one of the pieces. Generally, I use Impen on all my body pieces and Infused on most of my jewelry pieces. I actually use 1 Triune and traits on one of the jewelry pieces in this build specifically, just because we need our max stats to be so high, and it's so very effective to buff up our max stats on a Warden that I felt this Triune really rounded up my stats and made them feel a lot better than they did otherwise. Next, for our skills, I'm going to talk a little bit about my choices for all these skills, because a lot of them are very different from my previous build. So if you just like to look at what skills I'm using, you can skip ahead and look at both bars, but here is the explanation for each one of the skills I am using. First off is Accelerating Drain from the Vampirism skill line. I use this skill mainly because it is a fantastic hard CC skill that we can use. It basically stuns your opponent for 3 seconds whenever you cast it at them, unless they are blocking, of course. And what it does is deals quite a significant amount of damage to them, heals you a tiny little bit. It procs the damage for less than 1 second per tick, and so you can easily get twice the amount of the damage in here within 1 global cooldown as you break the ability. And then you also gain a little bit of speed through the Minor Expedition whenever you use the skill. You can break the skill or the channel effect of the skill as soon as you cast it, and the stun will still apply. The damage has already been dealt, at least for the initial hit, and you gain your Minor Expedition for the entire duration. You don't have to let the entire channel go through. This is the first improvement in means of control that we were lacking in the previous build. It actually lets you stun your opponent, which we really didn't have any actual strong stun on a previous patch, and I like using this one a lot. I also feel like it's worth mentioning I am a vampire now this patch, because I feel like, unlike in the previous patch where there was so much damage everywhere with a lot of dot stacking on you, in this patch the meta is a lot more relaxed, and while there are builds out there that deal a lot of damage, you don't take so much damage from all sources, and so if you take a little bit more damage from fire sources and fighter's guild abilities, it's not the end of the world, and so vampirism is less of a downside. So I think this patch you can actually afford to use it, and that's how Accelerating Drain is enabled for this build. Next up is Dip Fisher. Obviously your burst skill, you use it a few seconds before you deal your actual burst, and it stacks together with whatever skills you are using, your ultimate, your spammables, anything that you are using, and it hits at the same time, which is very, very effective. Also, in addition to it, it inflicts your enemy with Major Breach, which reduces their spell resistance by 5.3k, which even more buffs up your penetration and allows you to deal more and more damage to your enemies. Next up is Bird of Prey. This is just a fantastic skill that gives you your major expedition if you need to be using it. That together with the Accelerating Drain allows you to have the most expedition buff you can get in the game. You get 40% extra speed, which helps you survive a lot in difficult scenarios where you need to kite and move away from your enemies, and also just by having it slotted on your bar, you gain 8% extra damage on all your other abilities. So I slotted on my front bar, and I love this skill a lot. Next, I'm using Shock Clench. This skill is just a very, very strong spammable skill that deals an AOE damage. As you guys might have noticed, the theme with the Warden class seems a lot to be the AOE burst. Shulk is an AOE skill. Shock Clench is AoE and supports this, and our ultimates, Meteor and Northern Storm, are both AoE skills. So you can stack a lot of burst, which also hits in an AoE manner to all the enemies you are fighting rather than just one. And that's why I love Shock Clench so much on Wardens. While you can use other skills that only deal damage to one target, I love the Explosion that is AoE, and you can use it on multiple targets that are chasing you or that are attempting to Zerg you down or XV1 you, and you can get all of them hit at the same time. Very effective for BGs, very effective for 1vxing, and I definitely like it a lot. Coming back to the Master's Lightning Staff that I said we are using, it buffs up the damage on our Shock Clench by 2k, and I feel is very, very effective to use. Next up, we are using Inner Light. We are only using the skill to buff up our crit chance and to buff up our max magicka. This skill on its own grants us a 5% max magicka increase, and through the Mage's Guild passives, it also increases your max magicka by 4% and your magicka recovery by 4%. And so it is very, very effective to use, buffs up your overall max magicka by roughly 9%, which is massive, and I just feel like it helps your burst a lot, even if you don't actively use the skill. Next up, we have Shooting Star, and while I do use it sometimes in specific scenarios, typically I don't use this ultimate. It is mainly there for the very same passive, to give us additional 2% max magicka and magicka recovery together with Inner Light, which just slotting these two on the front bar, like I said, gives us the 4% plus the 5 from Inner Light, 9% max magicka increase just by having those two slotted on our bar. And then with the Minor Berserk we gain from Bird of Prey, we have 8% damage added on top of that. So our offensive abilities on the front bar obviously hit very, very hard. Going to the back bar, we are using Dampen Magic. First of all, and this skill is just really good to keep you alive. I used to use Harness Magicka in the past, but due to some changes that were done to this other morph, I feel like it's not worth running quite as much anymore, and I like Dampen Magic. It just helps you survive for a longer amount of time. You don't really need the Magicka sustain you gain from Harness on this build, since our Magicka control is really, really good, and so Dampen Magic is just really useful to cast once and then cast some additional buffs or heals on yourself, and the shield will not instantly go down because it is a very, very strong shield when you are fully buffed up. Next, our Blue Betty, which I've mentioned a couple times already. It gives you additional magicka over time. It gives you your major sorcery that you need to have on your build to increase your overall spell damage, and it also cleanses negative effects. Just a fantastic skill. It also procs our Necropotence on top of everything else. Just a fantastic skill that obviously you want to run on your build. Next is Living Trellis. I love this skill so much. It basically is a healing skill that procs a healing effect on you every time that you take damage, plus a huge amount of health back to you whenever you recast this skill. So you can spam this skill for a burst heal, or you can just have it on you and then pop on Dampen Shield, and when you take damage, your shield goes down, but your health goes up from Living Trellis. So with you doing other stuff and not necessarily spamming heals, you still get your health back while your shield goes down. It is a very strong combo, and I love it quite a bit. Next, we have Arctic Blast. This is a really solid skill, surprisingly enough. Wardens have major toughness through their passives. And so, or minor toughness, excuse me, through their passive. And so, using Arctic Blast, which scales off of your max health, actually heals for a massive amount. Roughly 10k health when you cast it instantly, and obviously more health over time. The hot you gain from Arctic Blast together with the heal over time from Living Trellis combined give you a lot of health per second, and when you get the damage mitigation from Dampen and from our sets with all the resistances on top of that, you just end up gaining more health than you lose when you have all your buffs applied to you and your shield. And so you can just keep casting other abilities, and until your shield goes down, while your buffs are still up, you just gain more and more health. In addition to that, Arctic Blast this patch also deals damage to enemies, and enemies that take damage from it 3 times through the 6 seconds duration, 6 times plus, basically get stunned. And this stun is very effective because many times your enemies can just attempt to roll away from your damage or from your hard CCs and block your accelerating drain. And so when you're using Arctic Blast, you can force them to get the hard CC that sometimes you wouldn't be able to apply to them otherwise. It is a very effective mean of control. It is the second improvement other than accelerating drain that we're adding that we didn't have in the previous patch in the version of the build, and now we do, and it helps our control in a big fight or even in just a 1v1 a lot. Next up is our Ice Fortress. It is a fantastic skill because it gives us our Major Word, Major Resolve as per usual, or now it's actually called just Major Resolve after some terminology changes that ZOS have done this patch. And so it gives you your physical and spell resistance that you need, and it also gives you the Minor Protection that reduces your damage taken by 8% for as long as it is up on you, which is a fantastic buff to have. And then we get to our main ultimate, Northern Storm. This is the ultimate you want to use pretty much always. This patch, unlike in the previous patch, Northern Storm doesn't buff your max Magicka just by being slotted on your bar. It buffs your max Magicka by 30%, which is, or excuse me, by 15%, which is huge, and lasts 30 seconds, which is really a fantastic effect, lasts for a long time, and is very effective. So this patch, you can actually use it on your back bar and swap to the front bar, and the buff will remain on you. And so on the front bar, we have our Shooting Star, and on the back bar, we have Northern Storm. And so when we use Northern Storm and go to the front bar with our Shooting Star and our Inner Light, we have the highest amount of Magicka that we can stack on one bar, and we gain a lot of offensive potential through that. In addition to that, obviously it gives you and your allies near you major protection for the duration of this ability, and it deals damage to enemies and reduces their movement speed by 40%. It has so many different effects combined into one in this ultimate, and with our Blood Spawn and Potatoes combo, we're able to have an almost 100% uptime on the max Magicka from it, and have a lot of ultimate up that we're able to cast whenever we need. And so very effective skill. We have a major uptime on it, and it makes our entire build have a lot more of both a defensive and an offensive potential. Just look at a combination of major protection and minor protection with all our resistances and our damage reduction from potatoes and all of our heal over time and our shield on top of that. We have just the most fantastic damage mitigation and healing kit in this build, and obviously with our very high offensive stats, we're able to deal a massive amount of damage to our enemies. A little bit of an adaptation that I sometimes do to this build that you can sometimes see in my gameplay is sometimes I actually use the Elemental Drain on the front bar instead of Accelerating Drain, and put Accelerating Drain on the back bar instead of Dampen Magic. Putting Accelerating Drain on the back bar is not a big deal because you can just bar swap cancel it as you begin the channel and get to your front bar, so you can CC your enemies from the back bar and be ready to go offensive right away. And what the Elemental Drain gives you is both the Magicka Steel that helps you sustain even better, and it gives you a Major Breach that, and I've tested it multiple times, Deep Fissure does not apply on itself. Yes, it causes Major Breach to the enemies, but its own value, the damage that Deep Fissure deals, isn't affected by its own Major Breach that it applies. It first deals its own damage and then adds the breach to your targets. So having Elemental Drain on your target increases your burst potential even more. So if sometimes you feel like your defensive gate is so strong you don't really need to use Dampen to keep yourself alive, you can just slot Accelerating Drain on the back bar and Elemental Drain on the front bar instead, and manage to have even stronger offensive burst, even better Magicka sustain, and just lose a tiny little bit of damage mitigation in the form of Dampen. And it really isn't the end of the world because we have so much resistance, so much damage mitigation, and so much healing power in our kit anyways. Next, a few more relevant passives and pieces of information. I am using Breton this patch. I think Breton is one of the strongest Magicka races in existence right now, and is best in slot for pretty much everything. On my MagDK specifically, I don't use Breton, but even there, I feel like Breton could be one of the best races if it isn't the best. And on this Warden, I am absolutely certain this is the best race that I want. Well, you can use High Elf or Dark Elf or even Argonian and be absolutely fine. I love the max Magicka increase that obviously goes well with our build, our spell resistance that we gain, and the little bit of Magicka recovery, and more than all, the Magicka cost reduction for all our skills. All our skills are Magicka based, and so using this passive, we are able to sustain our Magicka a lot better, and it allows us to have the ability to never run out of Magicka in long fights with even less Magicka recovery than we would need otherwise. I absolutely love Breton, and I think it is the best in slot race for this build. We're also, as I mentioned, playing as a Vampire this patch. It's not a must to use Vampire, but I really feel it is very effective this patch, and Accelerating Drain as well as the passive really make this this entire skill line worth to have. Yes, it has a lot of disadvantages, especially when you fight Mag DKs, but you can out-heal their damage the vast majority of the time because our build is very tanky and has a lot of healing power in it. And in this patch, that feels a lot less offensive than the previous ones. I actually feel like it is worth to be using this skill line despite all the weaknesses of it. For our Mundus, we are using the Mage, obviously, because we want to have as much max Magicka as possible, of course. For our food, we are using the Bewitched Sugar Skulls. We just really want to benefit as much as we can and gain the highest max stats we possibly can. Our Magicka recovery and sustain is really good this patch anyways, so instead of running Wish Mothers, we are just running the Tri-Stat food that gives us the most max stats. You can also use the Longfing Pasty. It also works. It costs a little bit less, but it gives you just a teeny tiny little bit less max stats than the Sugar Skulls, so you can go with either or, but my personal favorite is the Bewitched Sugar Skulls. As for the potion, we're just using regular Tri-Stat potions with this build. You can go with immunity potions or anything else that you feel is fitting for this build in your opinion. My personal favorite is the Tri-Stat potion because it helps us regain our stats on all our different pools at the same time. Next, for the champion points, I'm going to go over all of them very quickly. Feel free to pause the video at any point if there's any tree you would like to see the points allocation I have on. And that's about it, you guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you like this build. I hope you would like to use it on your Magicka Wardens, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I will also be linking down below in the description and the comment section both my personal Discord, which you're all welcome to join if you have any questions you'd like to ask me, and my Twitch channel. I stream live PvP couple times every week on my MagDK or my Mag Warden for the most part, and I would love to have you guys in there. I'm going to add a few gameplay videos right here in the end of this build video, so I hope you guys enjoy those. And once again, thank you all very, very much for watching. I appreciate it a ton, and I'll see you all in the next one. It's years since I let go. Work when I wanna work.